Here is the truth that is hard to swallow. Most residency CVs are dead on arrival. They look the same, they all sound the same, and program directors spend about a couple of seconds to decide who to interview and which CVs to toss into the garbage. This is an unfortunate reality. So if your CV doesn't hit the right notes, it becomes invisible instantly. But here's the twist. It's not about adding more stuff. It's about knowing the hidden checklist. The checklist that program directors go through, and they make a mental note when looking through your CV. Now, don't forget, program directors use a couple of seconds to decide. And today, I'm going to walk you through this checklist. I'm going to go show you step by step how you can reorganize your CV to make it unforgettable. It doesn't matter if you're an IMG, it doesn't matter if you have red flags. This will make you unforgettable. Now, the first thing you need to know that the only way to make your CV stand out is by approaching it through 3 steps. First step, 1, order of your experience. 2, clarity of your bullets. 3, the way each entry into your CV reinforces your personal statement and letters of recommendation. So the idea is everything you put in your CV will reinforce your personal statement and letters of recommendation without sounding repetitive. But the problem is 90% of applicants get this wrong. The way we arrange our CV, it can be random. If you don't have this checklist in your mind, it then begins to seem like you just have to put all your experiences there without necessarily emphasizing one above the other. No, all CV sections are not created equally. Depending on who you are, depending on your strength, depending on the people writing your letters, the sections in your CV are not necessarily equal. So you have to master order, clarity, and alignment. That is very important, and that helps you separate yourself immediately. So I guess the question is, what exactly are the program directors scanning for in the first 60 seconds? Because if you know this thing, you are able to focus on those things that will grab the attention of the program directors. So let's break it down. Now, imagine you're a program director and you have to go through 3,000 applications. How do you decide who to select? You are not reading through the CVs, you are skimming. You are looking for things that your eyes will catch. That is the goal. You have no time to go through every single detail. So you're looking for very specific things in the CV that when they hit your vision, you are like, okay, let's take a look at this candidate. Number 1, the first thing is the first line of the bullet point. The first thing. The next thing is roles, big roles that you played. Leadership roles, chief resident, coordinator. These things are roles of leadership. Now, I have to emphasize that a lot of us who are IMGs were chief residents back home. You have to put that in your CV. Being a chief resident back in your country, or even doing residency back in your country, is a huge advantage that nobody actually talks about. So those roles, being a chief resident, doing residency, being a coordinator, put them in your CV. Let them be highlighted by bullet points. Don't forget, if you have a lot of words that are just packed, your CV will get skipped. Make them as thin, as eligible as possible. The program directors don't have time, okay? So first line, catch their attention. Second line, put your leadership role if possible. Let your leadership role stand out in almost everything you did. Very, very key. The third thing that catches their eye is number. Numerical numbers. Put it there. I saw 60 patients. Put 60. That will catch their attention. Try not to write numbers in alphabets. Use numbers. Saw 10 patients. 10 patients. Saw 5 patients. Put a number. That will catch their eye. If you say something like responsible for organizing journal club, that's very passive and program directors will just skip. But if you say something like led journal club for 20 residents, improved attendance by 40%, the difference is between, that's like 3/10 versus or 10/10. It's like really just great. So put a number. Always put a number. I know that most of us don't recall the numbers that we did. I don't recall the numbers that I did. But you can have an approximate number. Approximately 9 patients per week. About. Put an estimate, even if you don't recall. Put a percentage, even if you don't recall, so that you're not too sure, but you're not falsifying it at the same time. Now, and I'm very passionate about this because as a chief resident and as a resident, I had a lot of experiences with program directors and other people in leadership role, and I've come to understand how their mind works, just interacting with them and asking them questions. And these things are quite important to them. From my own personal experience during my interviews for fellowship, the program director had asked me, I saw in your CV that you led X number of residents to do this kind of research. And tell me about that experience. They actually look at how you quantify your experience. So that is very important to put a number. And to be very honest with you, step scores are not as important. They used to be very important back in the day, but step scores are no longer important. What people are looking for is a human being that is able to work with people, that has interpersonal skills. I keep saying this thing. People just want to look at your CV and feel the warmth from your CV. They want to feel like, oh, this person will be a good fit for us. This person will be a leader. Because when they're looking through your CV, they make a mental note. In their head, they are saying, will this person be able to shine here? Will this person be able to come here and lead QI projects? Will this person be able to come here and teach medical students? That's what's going through their mind. They're looking for people that can lead. They're looking for people who will be examples. So that's when you understand that this is what people in leadership positions are looking for, then you can be able to understand how you write your CV, your personal statement, and even how you do interviews. But I think there's a problem here. And the problem is, what if you don't have flashy numbers like that? Now, I already said that you can make an estimate, like a guesstimate, but if you truly don't have numbers like that, what do? Well, don't worry, because you can transform your relatively average experience into something that is actually great on paper. You can absolutely transform an average experience into something that's great on paper, because truly no experience is average. You just don't know it yet. And now this brings us to section 2, the strategic order of experience. ERAS allows you to choose up to 10 meaningful experiences. The problem is a lot of people, what they do is they put the longest experiences there or the most recent experiences there, but that is not totally correct. Actually, that's incorrect. In terms of your experience, what do program directors care about? There are only 4, and this is 1, patient care; 2, research; 3, leadership; 4, teaching. These 4 are the most important things that program directors care about. So if you have an experience that is 12 years long but doesn't fall in this category, you want to talk about them as little as possible. You don't want to go over emphasizing on those experiences. You need to understand that if the experience means a lot to you, that is good, but the experience doesn't necessarily mean anything to the program directors. You have to stick with what the program directors care about. And this is the 4 things I just mentioned: patient care, research, leadership, and teaching. That's it. In my CV, I put my experience as teaching before I entered medical school. And even though this was a very long time ago, it was asked during my interviews. And I think I was just only 17 years when I actually had that experience, but it became a recurring discussion during interviews. But why is that? Because program directors love someone who teaches. If you can teach your interns, you can teach your residents, you can teach your medical students. So that's a quality that everybody's looking for. And teaching in itself tells us that you have good communication skills, right? So teaching. Remember to put your teaching contributions in your CV. This is not about how long you did the rotation. It's about what's the strength of that rotation. So here's what you can do. You want to put the strongest signals, the strongest experience at the top, and then put the remaining fillers down. The things that have the most composition of patient care, research, teaching, and leadership skills, you want to put those experiences on top of your 10 experiences, so that when the program directors are scrolling through, they have that instant gratification. They can see your leadership skills, your teaching skills, your research skills, your patient care skills. That instantly makes them want to look at your CV with a close attention. That's what you should do. But here's what gets interesting. Now, even if you've arranged these things in order, you still have to be able to overcome the next hurdle. And what is the next hurdle? That is inconsistencies. Inconsistencies in your CV means the things that may throw your CV off and not represent across board. So your CV is supposed to be like a pillar that can be cross-referenced against your personal statement and your letter of recommendation. So you need to be able to align all these 3 things so that it doesn't look like you are not consistent. What do I mean? If your CV says led 5 projects and your letter of recommendation says led 2 projects, now there's a discrepancy between the 2. So you have to be very sure of the data you give your letter writers when they are writing, so that you don't conflict the 2 items. Your CV has to be able to be cross-referenced in your personal statement and your letter of recommendation. That is very key. Most of you know that I talk about the personal statement and I talk about not writing your CV into your personal statement. So we know that, right? For those of you who have not watched my video on personal statement, you can watch my video on personal statement, but in summary, you don't want to put your CV stuff in your personal statement. However, you can make just one-liner reference to your personal statement in some cases in order for you to be able to explain a story, to give a story more color. So that is what I'm talking about. You want to keep those references aligned across board. You don't want to say 2 projects in your personal statement and say 5 projects in your CV. You have to cross-check those inconsistencies. The reason why I'm emphasizing this is that one of my mentees, they had applied, and in their personal statements, they wrote that they were chief residents. But in their CV, it was written that they were an associate chief resident. So the question came up, why the inconsistency? And that was difficult to explain because they were blindsided by that error. So I think this is something that you need to take very seriously because people actually go through your CVs. Okay, so what if you have a red flag, like a gap year or like a low USMLE score? Or maybe you're an old IMG. How do you overcome this? The whole idea in this case is to demonstrate that in that time, you've been working on yourself. You've been able to do a lot of things that have impacted both yourself and your community. So instead of saying something like, I went unmatched in 2023, they will say, I was a clinical research scholar from 2023 to 2024. I mentored junior students and published XYZ paper in this journal. That tells us that you didn't sit around, you've been undergoing transformation. Or you say, I took up this course, I expanded my baseline knowledge in this, I did a non-accredited fellowship, or I started residency in my home country. What you've been doing that gives you the edge, the things that you've been doing to make you stand out, to make you overcome this current quote-unquote red flag. But this is one more thing that program directors absolutely love. And if you get this right, you have gotten interview and you have gotten things to talk about during your interview. And this is the hobbies section of your CV. Yes, your hobbies, they matter extremely. And the reason why this matters is because in your hobbies section, you are fully able to articulate and humanize yourself. You are able to tell us that you are a person. You're not just a fantastic doctor, you're not just, a fantastic student. You are a human being that every single person can relate with, every single person can talk to, communicate with. That section is one of the most important. And I talk about this section very, very often because it always comes up. When I was interviewing, every single time I got asked about my hobbies, everybody talked about, oh, tell me, I see that you like karaoke. I see that you like playing chess. I see that you like videography. Tell me about this stuff that you will be talking about. These hobbies are what humanizes you. And the interesting part about hobbies is that in some programs, your hobbies get published on the website. So when people meet you for the first time, they already know your hobbies. And that's what actually I've experienced. People already know that, oh, this guy loves karaoke, he loves videography and stuff like that. So you should definitely take the hobbies very, very serious. Okay? Just having a hobby that humanizes you and makes you look good will change the game. It will come up on your interview and you will absolutely crush your interview. Now, how do you use this hobby section to your strength? So one of my friends, she had told me about her experience during interview season, and she loves cooking. But on her CV, instead of saying, I love cooking, what she said was actually mind-blowing. She said that, I love cooking vintage dishes. In my residency back home, I led cultural dinners and cooking competition. I once hosted 50 residents and faculty, and in this competition was aired on the news. So what is she trying to show in hobbies? She's trying to say that she organized a cooking dinner. She pulled the entire residency to come and be at her dinner. She even had the news on that dinner. So that's like something that I have never heard of, and that's a whole chapter for discussion during interviews. That is very important. I will tell you how important this thing is. I have to emphasize it because when, as a resident, I've heard my faculties, my program directors talk about amazing candidates that even though didn't match in our program, they still cannot forget. I remember one of my program directors had talked about a candidate that they interviewed who had told them that she was in the Olympics game. So in their hobbies, they wrote, the Olympics participation that they had, and it was mind-blowing. So that is how serious they take that section of your CV. Some of them do not forget even after the interview season. It still sticks in their mind. So you have to take it very, very seriously. Now, other experiences are important. You should absolutely crush those experiences. But when it comes to the hobbies section, you should absolutely take your time to bring it to life. So I guess my question for you now is, if a program director should look at your CV, what is the one thing that you think they will see that will absolutely blow their mind? Leave it in the comment section. If you are unsure of that, then you need to tweak your CV a little bit. You don't need to change the entire CV. You just need to allocate different experiences with different strategies. So here's a recap of everything I've just been saying. The 60-second skim test. The program directors look through your CV in 60 seconds. And when going through your CV, they have a mental checklist that they go through. The first one is the strategic order of your experiences. The second one is cross-referencing for inconsistencies. The things that are on your CV should align with the things that are in your personal statement and the things that are in your letter of recommendation. The third one is how you manage your red flags. And then lastly, how you use your hobbies to humanize yourself. Don't forget, like I said, within the strategic order of experiences, you have to highlight patient care, you have to highlight research, you have to highlight leadership and teaching. That's the hidden checklist. You master this, transfer this into your CV, and your CV will be unforgettable. I always encourage you to do your CV and your personal statement yourself. But if you think you need help, you can click the link down below. But I encourage you to do your CV and your personal statement yourself. For those of you who want to know about how I wrote my own personal CV, you can go and check out my personal CV. I give word for word my CV that I used to apply. And for those of you who want to write personal statement, I also have a link to my personal statement in the comment section. Check out that video on my personal statement. If you find these videos useful, be sure to subscribe. In my next video, I'm going to talk about how to put your CVs together in the shortest possible time. I'm also going to be talking about the mistakes to avoid when writing personal statements. I'll see you in the next one.